Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today, we are going straight into the heart of modern media power. And for you, the listener, we're really tackling a fundamental paradox. It's something that defines the 21st century. How did we, individuals, gain this unprecedented, almost radical power to publish absolutely everything, yet somehow lose complete control over where that content actually lives, and critically, who profits from it?
It really is the crucial question of our digital age, isn't it? We're exploring this intense tension. On one hand, individual creative freedom, and on the other, this colossal corporate infrastructure control. Our deep dive today centers on digital souveraineté, or digital sovereignty, and what our sources, quite provocatively, label digital feudalism. We need to understand not just what these terms mean, but what they really cost the modern creator, the everyday user.
Okay, let's unpack this immediately then. We've got some compelling sources here that outline this precise dynamic. They focus specifically on what's called the Linkspreed variation view, which sounds like a pretty comprehensive strategic framework for, fighting back against this structure.
Right. And the entire intellectual architecture of this problem, it's kind of framed by one statement, often attributed to Elon Musk, though its origins might be debated. You are the media.
You are the media. Okay.
What's truly fascinating here is what that statement seems to encapsulate versus what it actually delivers in practice, day to day. It speaks to this radical, fundamental democratization of publishing power. It means that every single person, basically with a smartphone and a decent internet connection, is potentially an editor-in-chief, capable of influencing global opinion. That kind of authority has unequivocally moved away from the traditional monopolies we all grew up with, the big publishing houses, the handful of cable networks, state broadcasters.
Yeah, that statement, you are the media, it sounds fantastic, almost like, the ultimate freedom achieved. But what's the immediate pragmatic price? What's the catch we pay for that freedom? We need to jump straight into that. We're going to unpack why, despite this radical freedom, this ability to be the engine of culture, why the creators, the people generating the content, driving the traffic, building the communities, why do they still operate essentially as powerless tenants in a system owned entirely by someone else?
Indeed. And that's the core of the feudalism argument. So we'll first define that problem, analyzing precisely how these centralized platforms enforce their control. We'll look at the various mechanisms of vulnerability they create. Then importantly, we pivot to the proposed solution articulated by this Linkspreed variation, which is all about achieving true, unassailable digital sovereignty through, essentially, ownership of your own infrastructure.
Okay, let's start with the seismic event that got us here in the first place. The 21st century, it's defined by this absolute dissolution of media boundaries, isn't it? We've seen a global, seismic decentralization of information flow. It's a massive, genuinely historical shift. We went from being passive consumers, just watching what the evening news anchor or the newspaper editor decided was important, to becoming, as the sources put it, the primary engines of news, culture, opinion, and global influence. We are the engine now.
The magnitude of that shift, it really cannot be overstated. Think about the power vacuum it created and filled. The capacity to create a global movement or launch a cultural sensation, or even just rapidly debunk a false narrative from a traditional source that no longer requires millions of dollars in broadcast infrastructure or access to elite gatekeepers. That's gone. That power now rests directly, sometimes frighteningly so, in the hands of the populace, ordinary people. This radical democratization has completely reshaped the landscape of authority. It's moved from institutional control to individual reach. Massively distributed reach.
Which means narratives aren't just being dictated solely by a handful of editorial boards in, say, New York, London, or Berlin anymore. Not primarily. They are shaped, often in real time, by millions of immediate, localized individual voices globally, amplified instantaneously by the technology we all carry in our pockets.
Exactly. And this reach, this amplification, it comes with a new and critical dimension. Individual action and, importantly, accountability. When you have this much reach, when you are effectively the media, you inherit the responsibility that comes with it. To use that power wisely, or unwisely, as the case may be, definitely a dual-edged sword. You get the massive reach of the global network, but you also face the inherent personal accountability for the information you spread. The platform might give you the voice, the reach, but it's the audience, the community, perhaps even regulators eventually, who hold you accountable for the content.
Right. So we have this incredible, almost utopian level of individual empowerment established on paper. We are the architects of culture. We shape opinion. But here is the critical paradox, the kicker, the thing that makes this entire system feel, well, broken for many creators, while we, the creator and the users, have embraced and fueled this empowerment, the actual control over our digital output, our audiences, and frankly, our digital lives. It lags miles behind the creative power we wield. It feels like we've been given this incredibly powerful megaphone, but we haven't been given the deed to the land the megaphone stands on. Our position feels incredibly precarious.
And that precariousness, that inherent instability, is exactly what makes the transition into the next section so vital. We absolutely must analyze what that precariousness costs creators in real terms, day in, day out.
Okay, so this is where we really define the antagonist in this story. Digital feudalism. If we accept the premise laid out in our sources, the Linkspreed variation view posits that creators, despite being the most valuable assets, I mean, they're the ones generating the billions in ad revenue for these platforms, they are merely tenants, serfs, almost, in this digital manner. They create the content, they drive the traffic, they build the communities that make these platforms sticky and valuable, yet they remain fundamentally dependent on a tiny handful of centralized, proprietary platforms, the Googles, the Metas, the Twitters. They act as our digital landlords, collecting the rent.
That analogy of landlord and tenant is spot on, and it's used deliberately in the sources. When you are a tenant, your entire livelihood, your digital home, is subject to the landlord's unilateral whim. Doesn't matter how meticulously you pay your rent, which is often your data, your content, your audience engagement. Doesn't matter how much value you bring to the property, the platform. The landlord holds the ultimate power.
But isn't the counter-argument always that the platform provides this massive, complex infrastructure? You know, the millions of servers, the global distribution network, the instant audience of billions. Isn't that immense value worth the rent they extract, like the data and the control?
It's absolutely the core defense offered by the platforms. The network effect they provide, the sheer scale, is presented as irreplaceable value. But the sources we're looking at argue very strongly that the platforms extract far, far more than just the operational cost of infrastructure. They extract strategic intelligence, economic control, and ultimately they enforce dependency.
Okay. What's fascinating here is the precise way these centralized platforms retain that absolute power, how they make the creator so fundamentally vulnerable. Our sources detail 4 specific interconnected mechanisms of this control that really establish this feudal structure. Let's break them down.
Yes, let's run through those 4 vulnerabilities, because this is where the creator's power, which seems so immense just a moment ago when we talked about you are the media, completely evaporates. The first is pure, unchecked governance, arbitrary rule setting.
Arbitrary rule setting. Describe the kind of economic devastation this specific mechanism can cause. How does it play out?
Well, the governance of these centralized platforms is, let's be blunt, it's unilateral and often incredibly swift. Opaque, too. They act as the Supreme Court, the legislature, and the police force, all rolled into one. And crucially, they answer only to their shareholders or their own internal metrics, not really to the creators on their platform. This leads to sudden, massive, and often poorly explained shifts in content policy, monetization rules, community guidelines, shifts that can instantaneously destroy an established creator's business model literally overnight.
Can you give us a concrete example of that kind of shift, how it might impact someone?
Sure. Imagine a successful video creator. Maybe they've built a decade-long archive of contents, thousands of videos, based on specific guidelines. Guidelines regarding, say, royalty-free music usage, or how affiliate links need to be disclosed, or what topics are okay for monetization. Now, if the platform suddenly changes those guidelines, maybe making all content featuring a certain type of music instantly ineligible for monetization, or deciding a common disclosure format is no longer sufficient, their entire backlog, potentially years of work representing significant passive income, can be instantly demonetized, or worse, flagged for removal.
Wow, okay.
And there's often no effective, timely, or transparent appeal process that truly matters. The rules shift from above, and the creator is forced to comply immediately, often involving huge amounts of remedial work or face economic ruin. The platform acts like a king enforcing sudden edicts, not like a transparent business partner operating under a stable contract.
So even if you follow the rules perfectly today, tomorrow's rule change, completely out of your control, can still wipe you out financially. And even if you manage to keep your content up, they can still prevent your audience from actually seeing it, right? Which brings us to the second vulnerability, control over distribution.
Exactly. This is the infamous black box of opaque algorithms. We all talk about the algorithm, but nobody outside the platform truly knows how it works. These algorithms dictate who sees what content, when they see it, and if they see it at all. And they do this based purely on the platform's proprietary goals. Those goals often prioritize maximizing platform engagement time or ad views or pushing certain platform features rather than maximizing the creator's economic reach or audience connection.
Right.
So creators constantly experience what's known colloquially as shadow banning or, maybe more accurately, systemic suppression of their content. Their reach mysteriously plummets. Views drop from millions to thousands, maybe even hundreds, without any official notification, explanation, or recourse. You're just left guessing.
And what's the strategic purpose behind that opacity? Why wouldn't they just show the creator the data, show them how the distribution works, help them reach their audience?
Well, the platform uses opacity strategically. It serves their interests. It's often designed, consciously or unconsciously, to prevent creators from reverse engineering the system or from optimizing against the platform's core goals, perhaps by finding ways to pull audiences off platform too effectively. By keeping the mechanics of distribution secret, a closely guarded trade secret, they force creators into a constant state of dependence, of uncertainty, chasing the algorithm's whims.
So you're always guessing.
Always guessing. If the platform controls the distribution, they fundamentally control the economic viability of the creator, regardless of the effort or quality the creator puts into the content. The algorithm becomes an economic weapon, or at least a gatekeeper, making the creator utterly subservient to whatever engagement metrics the landlord decides are most valuable today.
Which leads us nicely to the core economic issue, the massive strategic giveaway that happens constantly: monetization and data exploitation. That's the third pillar of this feudal structure, according to the sources.
Right. This is where the creator's true underlying value is harvested, often without them fully realizing the extent of it. The creator's data, specifically the first-party data about their audience, their demographics, their engagement habits, their purchasing intent, their behavioral patterns, this data is the absolute fuel of the modern trillion-dollar digital media and advertising business. And this crucial proprietary data, generated by the creator's content and community building, is owned and exploited almost entirely by the platform, not the creator.
Okay.
The platform uses this superior, unfiltered data for its own strategic decision-making, for competitor analysis, for training its AI, and obviously for hyper-targeted advertising that maximizes their profit.
And the creator, whose work generated all that valuable data, receives what in exchange for it?
A sliver, a fraction. The creator is the source of this immense value, the magnet drawing the audience, yet they typically receive only a percentage, a cut, of the derived advertising value shown against their content, maybe some aggregated, often limited analytics. But the platform profits immensely, not just from that immediate ad sale, but from the long-term strategic intelligence gained from owning that rich first-party data across millions of creators and users.
So you're essentially mining digital gold for the landlord, building their long-term strategic advantage, and getting paid only a tiny wage in return.
That's a very apt analogy. If you don't own the data, you can't own the strategy for your own business. And you certainly can't maximize the profit from your own audience relationships.
Which brings us to the final and perhaps most terrifying vulnerability. The ultimate existential thread that hangs over every single creator's head on these platforms: the power of deplatforming at will. This is the consequence of that centralized control, the single point of failure that defines this digital vulnerability.
Absolutely. This is the nuclear option for the platforms. We've all seen the headlines or heard the stories. A creator who has spent years building a massive following, maybe millions of subscribers, publishing thousands of hours of content, fostering a thriving community, wakes up one morning and finds their entire digital existence, their livelihood, their community, their accumulated influence is simply gone, deleted, account suspended, no warning.
Just erased.
Erased. A platform can instantaneously censor, demonetize, or completely remove an individual or organization, often based on opaque rule interpretations or maybe even public pressure campaigns. This erasure is often total and irreversible from the creator's perspective. You lose the content, the audience connection, the monetization setup, everything. The creator has essentially no defense against this kind of total digital expulsion because fundamentally they never owned the ground they built their digital house on. We're always just renting.
So what does this all mean when you put those four vulnerabilities together? The arbitrary rules, the opaque distribution, the data exploitation, the threat of deplatforming. If we synthesize this painful paradox, the core belief that arises from these sources is, well, it feels undeniable. True digital sovereignty, real independence, requires absolute structural ownership and control, not just the mere permission to participate on someone else's terms.
Exactly.
Being the media isn't just about making compelling content anymore. It's about owning the infrastructure, owning the distribution channels, owning the audience data, and owning the economic engines where that content securely lives and generates value for you.
And this stark reality brings us squarely to the solution proposed by the sources, the Linkspreed core philosophy, which they articulate as the Linkspreed variation. Their mission statement is powerful and incredibly clear. You must have complete, unassailable control over your corner of the internet and the media ecosystem you build.
Unassailable control. That's a direct challenge to the entire feudal structure we just described. It's not about negotiating better terms with the landlord, it's about becoming the owner. And it seems targeted precisely at the individuals who are driving the modern web. The global influencers, the specialized coaches, the opinion-shaping journalists, and also, critically, perhaps everyday internet users who just want a safe, sovereign space for their community, their family group, their niche hobby, away from the big platform's control.
The goal here is framed as radical reclamation. It's about consciously moving beyond dependence on the platform's unpredictable good graces or its latest algorithm updates. The solution proposed is empowering these individuals and groups to actually build their own bespoke media platforms and social networks, independent ones. They argue you need to shift the equation entirely, from being a constant supplicant hoping the platform's algorithm favors you today, to becoming the absolute governor, the owner, the rule maker, and the ultimate legal authority of your own digital space.
So if we contrast the relationship clearly, we're talking about moving from a state of tenancy, renting space on YouTube or Facebook or Substack, hoping your landlord doesn't suddenly change the locks or raise the rent astronomically, to one of absolute ownership, building a digital asset, a legacy that lasts and that you control.
Precisely. And the core requirement for achieving that true sovereignty, according to this framework, is permanence, or at least resilience against arbitrary destruction. The platform the creator builds must be architected to live, operate, and generate value for the creator and their community indefinitely, or at least for as long as the creator wishes it to. It has to be built in such a way that the crippling fear of arbitrary, single point of failure deletion, that deplatforming threat, is structurally eliminated.
Right.
This isn't just about, say, moving your website hosting. It's about fundamentally building a digital fortress, perhaps using decentralized technologies or simply owning the stack where you hold the keys, you set the rules, and you control the economy within its walls.
Okay, but given the very real existential threat of total deplatforming we just detailed, the immediate question arises. Is it preferable? Yes, obviously. But is recreating that level of global network effect, that technological complexity, the user experience, is that actually achievable for the average creator or even a mid-sized media company? That seems like a huge lift.
That's the crucial question of feasibility. And the answer, according to these sources, lies in understanding and leveraging the four key pillars, the structural advantages that true sovereignty offers. It's not necessarily about matching Facebook's scale, but about building the right scale and control for your community.
Okay, so if the digital fortress is the goal, we need to understand the structural advantages that allow that fortress to actually stand and function effectively. Our sources detail 4 fundamental pillars of sovereignty that define this necessary shift from tenancy to absolute ownership. Let's start with the one that speaks most directly to the creative impulse, the reason many people create in the first place. Pillar 1, unrestricted and censorship-free expression.
Right. This is positioned as the bedrock foundation of any truly independent media ecosystem. It centers entirely on the creator becoming the ultimate final authority within their own digital domain. When you own the infrastructure, you can genuinely guarantee that your opinions, your critical contributions, your community discussions can be uploaded, shared, and debated without that constant chilling fear of algorithmic suppression, arbitrary content strikes, or capricious moderation from external centralized parties. Parties whose commercial or political interests often conflict directly with open discourse or with your specific niche.
And a key part of this is allowing for true specialized self-governance. That seems like a huge difference from the one-size-fits-all policies of the mega platforms.
It's a fundamental difference. The creator, as the owner, sets the rules of engagement specifically tailored for their community, their niche, their ideological viewpoint. So, for example, if you were a specialized financial coach dealing with complex, maybe sensitive investment strategies, you can set community rules that encourage a high level of professional discourse and discourage irrelevant chatter, something a generic platform might struggle to enforce appropriately. Or, if you're an opinion-shaping journalist, aiming to foster debate across a specific ideological spectrum, you can set moderation policies that you, the owner, deem appropriate for productive discussion within your community's context, without being shoehorned into a mega platform's globally applied, often vague and sometimes nonsensical, generic content policies that have to cater to billions of users with conflicting norms.
Okay, that makes sense. And that self-governance, that control over rules, leads directly to the promise of permanent content, right? Protecting your work.
Yes, exactly. Your intellectual property, your creative archives, your community's collective knowledge base, your entire digital legacy. It's protected because the content resides on infrastructure that you control, under rules that you set. It becomes fundamentally safe, or at least significantly safer, from those capricious deletions or sudden retroactive policy changes that plague creators on centralized platforms. Your life's work or your community's history can't just be erased because an unknown, potentially poorly trained, outsourced moderator on the other side of the world decided it violated a vaguely defined rule they barely understand.
Right.
Permanence means stability. It means the assurance that years of invested work, community building, and intellectual effort aren't just a temporary rental agreement, liable to be terminated without notice.
Okay, that's a powerful draw. Now, moving to the economic side, which is often the driving factor for creators trying to make a living, this is perhaps the most quantifiable advantage against feudalism. Pillar 2, economic autonomy and direct monetization.
This is absolutely critical for sustainability. The entire goal here is bypassing the platform middlemen. And it's not just about saving a percentage cut on transactions, although that's significant. It's about reclaiming strategic economic control, owning the entire value chain from content creation to audience payment. The ideal scenario promoted here is achieving 100% revenue ownership, or as close to it as possible. How? By implementing direct payment systems, think Stripe, PayPal, maybe even crypto rails, plus native subscription tools, membership tiers, and direct tipping mechanisms, all routing funds directly from the audience member to the creator, with only standard payment processing fees, not the platform taking a hefty cut on top.
Right. That platform cut can be huge. Let's put that into real context. Right. For a creator running, say, a subscription community or selling online courses, avoiding a typical 30% cut from an app store or even a 10-15% platform monetization split on ad revenue or subscriptions, that represents a radical increase in net profit, doesn't it?
Absolutely radical. That 15%, 30%, sometimes even 50% cut taken by the platform or app store is often the entire difference between a creator struggling to break even and running a highly profitable, sustainable media business. It's massive. Furthermore, sovereignty allows for complete custom advertising control if the creator chooses to incorporate ads at all. And that's a key point. They decide if they host ads. It's not forced upon them. If they do, they control the ad inventory slots, they set the pricing directly, maybe premium CPMs for their niche audience, and crucially, they approve the advertisers themselves.
So no more inappropriate ads showing up next to your content.
Exactly. This ensures strict brand alignment and safety. You won't have your serious investigative journalism podcast suddenly running jarring, low-quality ads for, I don't know, a mobile game or a psychic hotline unless you specifically approve that advertiser. You maximize the profits because you, the owner, negotiate and set the premium rates and terms directly, not rely on the platform's remnant, aggregated, race-to-the-bottom auction system for ad placements.
And this direct control must also streamline the creation of things like paywalls and exclusive memberships, which are increasingly important revenue streams.
It does, significantly. Owners gain the ability to easily create and manage exclusive content channels. Think tiered access levels for premium articles, video courses, private community forums, or high-touch coaching services, all managed entirely on their own domain, using integrated tools or plugins, connected to their own chosen payment gateways. This cuts out the technical complexity, the limitations, and often the mandatory revenue share associated with using external third-party membership platforms or learning management systems, which just act as yet another middleman taking a cut. You bring it all in-house.
Okay, pillar 3. This deals with what you earlier called the true gold mine of the digital age, absolute data sovereignty and insights. We identified first-party data as the strategic fuel the feudal lords hoard. Sovereignty is about the creator stopping that giveaway and harnessing it themselves.
Precisely. And what's necessary here, according to the sources, is not just owning the raw data, but gaining the quality and granularity of insight needed for genuine strategic growth. With ownership, creators gain full analytics control. This means deep, unfiltered access to user behavior logs, engagement patterns across different content types, precise demographic information volunteered by users, conversion tracking. This proprietary data isn't filtered, aggregated, delayed, or obscured by a restrictive platform API or dashboard designed to protect the platform's interests.
So you see the real picture.
You see the real raw picture. This enables genuinely strategic decision-making. Things like knowing precisely which content format drives the most newsletter signups or premium membership conversions, or understanding the true lifetime value of different audience segments, or accurately calculating customer acquisition costs without the platform's attribution models interfering. It's your data for your strategy.
And this connects profoundly to building trust, doesn't it? Especially now in an era of massive privacy concerns and regulations like GDPR. The creator takes on responsibility here, privacy and trust.
Yes, and this is a crucial point that cuts both ways. When you own the data infrastructure, you control exactly how and where user data is collected, stored, processed, and secured. Now, this is a significant distinction. Ownership means you also take on the direct legal liability. You are now personally responsible for ensuring compliance with complex, evolving regulations like GDPR in Europe, CCPA in California, and others globally. That's not trivial.
Right, that's a big responsibility.
It is, but the argument is that the trade-off is potentially massive. By taking this responsibility seriously, you can build unparalleled trust with your audience. You can make a transparent, credible pledge that you are the sole custodian of their information, that you won't sell their data, that you won't exploit their attention without consent. This commitment to data ethics and user privacy can become a major selling point, a differentiator, especially for premium communities or content aimed at discerning audiences wary of big tech surveillance.
And it also fosters that sought-after, almost old-fashioned, genuine connection, the direct audience relationship, moving beyond just metrics.
Absolutely. Instead of relying on an opaque algorithm to guess who your most engaged fans are, and then maybe deciding, to show your latest post to a fraction of them, you get the opportunity to actually know your audience members by name, perhaps by email address with consent, by their direct interactions in your own community forums or comment sections. They stop being just abstract users or followers, represented as numbers filtered through an algorithm designed primarily to serve the platform's engagement metrics. They become known individuals, community members, whose loyalty you can cultivate directly through own channels like newsletters, direct messages within your platform, private groups. This is how digital legacy and real community value are truly built, step by step.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Wrapping up the 4 pillars, then, we arrive at pillar 4, technical and feature control. This seems to be about the core concept that the platform must actually work for you, the creator, serving your specific needs rather than forcing you into a generic one-size-fits-all mold.
Exactly. Too often, creators feel constrained, limited by the rigid templates, the predefined feature sets, and the slow pace of innovation offered by centralized platforms. They want a button that does X, but the platform only offers Y. Sovereignty, in this view, unlocks custom integration freedom. This means having the technical flexibility to integrate third-party tools via APIs, to develop custom features from scratch, or to modify existing open-source components at the deepest technical level.
Can you give some examples of what that might look like in practice?
Sure. Maybe you need a highly specific polling feature, tailored to run complex, multi-wave academic surveys for your research journalism website. A standard platform poll won't cut it. Or perhaps you need a unique form structure specifically designed for peer-to-peer mentorship tiers within your specialized coaching group. Or maybe you need a deep proprietary e-commerce widget designed to sell a very specific type of niche digital product or physical merchandise integrated seamlessly with your content. Centralized platforms generally prevent this level of deep customization or integration because it increases complexity and support costs for them. Owning the infrastructure gives you the freedom to build or integrate literally anything you need to optimize your specific community experience or business model.
This level of control also ensures an unwavering brand identity, which the major platforms, by their very nature, constantly dilute by forcing everyone into similar-looking profiles or pages.
Absolutely critical for many brands and creators. With ownership, you maintain complete granular control over the entire look, feel, and user experience, the UX/UI design. There are no restrictive template limitations imposed by the platform holder. Your platform becomes a seamless, professional, and unique extension of your established brand identity. It operates as a distinct digital destination, reinforcing your brand values and aesthetic, not just another generic page sharing visual space and branding cues with billions of other creators and the platform itself.
And finally, under technical control, the issue of scaling. Scalability happens entirely on your terms, not the platform's.
Yes. This is about performance and reliability under load. As the owner, you choose the hosting environment, the server configurations, the content delivery networks, CDNs, and the scalability options like auto-scaling that best suit your current audience size and your projected growth. You move from potentially shared, often constrained resources on a mega platform to infrastructure specifically architected and provisioned for your needs. This prevents the nightmare scenario, often experienced on shared platforms where your site or community slows down, becomes buggy, or even crashes during peak demand periods, like after a viral post or during a live event.
Which is often entirely out of the creator's control in the feudal system and can kill momentum instantly.
Exactly. Because you manage the infrastructure or work directly with a provider who does for you, you manage the capacity, the performance tuning, and ultimately the continuity of service for your audience. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow. Okay, what a truly phenomenal deep dive into the architecture of modern digital power and powerlessness. If we zoom out now, the core message from these sources seems crystal clear. The lines between creator and publisher have, in effect, completely dissolved. We've moved from a system where maybe we were merely given permission to speak, to use the platform's tools, to a new era where arguably we must demand and build ownership over the actual means of distribution and monetization to be truly free and secure.
It really is about reframing the relationship, moving from tenancy to mastery, from dependence to independence. The Linkspreed solution, as presented, is essentially a pledge, a call to action to empower individuals, creators, journalists, communities to move beyond just being a talented contributor feeding someone else's platform. The idea is you take ownership of the keys, the blueprint, and the very foundation, allowing you to build, manage, and crucially defend your own media ecosystem. An ecosystem designed to serve your interests and your community's needs first, last, and always.
Yeah. And the ultimate takeaway from the source material is quite direct, quite motivational. It's presented as a call to action for the sovereign creator in all of us, perhaps. It's time to stop renting space and start owning your legacy. Your voice deserves a home that is truly uncensored and unequivocally independent.
And, this massive potential power shift, this move toward total digital sovereignty, it raises a really profound and immediate governance challenge, one we only briefly touched upon. We spent this entire deep dive discussing the means of production, the technology, the infrastructure, the economics, the how-to of building the fortress. But if you, the creator, become the ultimate authority, the one setting all the rules for your digital fortress, the critical question inevitably becomes, how do you actually balance that guaranteed freedom of expression you wanted for your community with the necessary difficult task of community moderation? How do you maintain user safety, prevent harassment, deal with illegal content, or manage toxic behavior when there is no higher centralized authority like a YouTube or a Facebook to appeal to or to enforce broad rules? That responsibility falls entirely on you.
That is the huge practical, ethical, and maybe even legal test of responsibility that comes bundled with total digital sovereignty. It's the inherent governance challenge you face when you decide to build your own independent corner of the internet. Definitely a fascinating and necessary thought for you, the listener, to perhaps mull over as you contemplate what building your own digital legacy might actually entail.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into digital feudalism and the potential path toward sovereignty.
Thank you. We will catch you next time on The Deep Dive.